You're listening to Miss Style, Strength, and Grace with Deidre Murphy. This is your one-stop shop for style, fashion, health, and fitness. Deidre's passion is to help empower women to reach their fullest potential, both inside and out. Deidre and her guests will be discussing how to develop your style, health, and lifestyle hacks to energize your day and inspire you to keep reaching higher levels of success. Deidre is a professional fashion stylist, health guru, and Mrs. Washington 2017. It's time to get open and honest with Deidre.
Well, hello and welcome to a very chilly episode today. It is almost the end of February, almost March, because my husband's birthday is actually tomorrow. He's a February 28th baby, thankfully not a leap year baby. Anyway, we have about 2 feet of snow surrounding my house right now, and it's almost March. My husband and I were talking about this the other day, and he said he has never seen snow on his birthday. Well, I guess there's a first time for everything, which brings me to the topic of today's podcast. With all this snow around me, I really got to thinking about some of the lessons that I'm taking away from this, and I decided to call today's episode, When Life Gives You Snow, Make Some Angels. So these are my biggest takeaways and life lessons from being snowed in. I know some of you have been hanging out with me for a little while on this podcast, so if you haven't listened to my show before, let me give you a little bit of history, not only about where I live as far as the town that I'm in, as well as where I actually live in the country out here. So I live in Tri-Cities, Washington, which is southeastern Washington, kind of inland Washington. Over to the, east of us is Idaho, south of us is Oregon. If you go west, then you're going to go over a mountain range and into kind of the Seattle area. Well, where we're at, it's seriously a desert. So a lot of people think Washington, rain all the time, wet. Not where I live, actually. So where I live is a desert steptoe region, which basically just means that it's dry. We get, I don't even know how much rain a year, but it's definitely enough to qualify as a desert. We have kind of like the rolling foothills, lots of sagebrush. We do have rivers that run through our cities, which is why we're called the Tri-Cities. I particularly live in Kennewick, although it's technically unincorporated Benton County, but my address says Kennewick, so I'm going with it. And I grew up here. So for about 18 years almost, I lived here growing up and never experienced crazy winters, so much to the point where when I was in high school, I didn't have a legitimate winter coat. The only thing I had was a wool kind of pea coat, which was perfect for the weather that we had around here, because if it got cold, you kind of bundle up, you'd have your scarf and your gloves and you had your layers, but you'd be fine. And if we did get snow, like on the off chance that we got snow, pretty much everything shut down anyway, and it was only like 1 to 2 inches, and you would pretty much guaranteed be gone by the next day. I remember maybe one sort of severe snow season growing up once, and it was only around for a couple days. So that's where I live. And then I went up to college, and that was when I first got a heavy winter down-filled coat. It was my first winter up in Spokane, Washington, which is higher in elevation. It's more north. And I remember calling home in October, and I saw snow in October for the first time in my life. And I said, "Mom, I need a winter coat. I don't know what to do." So we finally got me a serious winter jacket. Well, now that I'm back in Tri-Cities, I went off to Spokane, did the whole school thing, did that, came back to Tri-Cities, my hometown, got married, live out here now. Where my husband and I are at now, we moved to the country about 3 years ago. My husband is a legitimate farm boy. He grew up on an apple and cherry orchard property. His parents are farmers. So for him, living in the country is just what he knows, and that's what he liked. Our first few years of marriage, we lived in town, so to speak, with neighbors and in a cute little quaint neighborhood, and he was just itching to get out of town, so to speak. So we now live about 15 to 20 minutes, about probably closer to 20 minutes away from civilization and the town of Tri-Cities, up on a hill, which always makes it really fun. And then because we have this crazy desert steptoe region, we get this southbound wind that comes up, and where we're at, because we don't have any trees or foliage to protect us, we get crazy winds up here if it is windy. I mean, I've seen days where On a light breezy day in town, it would be blowing up here like 35 to 40 mile an hour winds. I've seen it up as high as 60 to 70 miles an hour out here. It can get a little nuts. Plus, when we're out here, we're off of some private and country roads. So first you have to take this country road that doesn't get plowed by the city to get to our house. Then you take another county road that's about 2 miles long to get out to our little area, neck of the woods. And then a private road that's about 1.5 miles long just to get to our home. And the private road itself is not owned by the city. That's why it's private. And it's owned by a farmer out here that does wheat farming. And if he doesn't come plow our road, we're kind of SOL, so to speak. I'm sure you know what that term means. We're out of luck. Well, this crazy winter has been trying my patience. So we've made it through most of the winter season, all through Christmas, all through January with a very mild winter. I remember doing Instagram stories and posts about how it was, 50 degrees in January and I was loving this. Like, I am a warm weather individual. I would rather be warm. And I was like, oh, this is great. I can handle a 50-degree winter. Like, even if it would freeze, it'd be overnight when I was in bed anyway. Well, then about 2 weeks ago, so it was the week right before Valentine's Day, we got dumped on with about a foot of snow here, and everything in town just pretty much shut down because our cities, they don't have the capacity to really manage this type of a winter. They don't have all the equipment to shovel all the snow and plow it all, like enough to get kids to school. I think the kids were out of school. I don't have children yet, but schools in town were shut down, I think, at least 6 days after that first dumping of snow. Yesterday, kids were out of classes again. So I think they're going on about 7 days here that they're going to have to tack on to the end of the year. So I definitely don't miss teaching when it's times like these, because I know I didn't like it when we had a snow day. I mean, granted, yes, I'd rather have kids be safe. I'd rather have everyone be safe. It's kind of a bummer when you're going to school through the middle of June. I digress. Back to the topic. So then we were able to kind of have a little reprieve from the snow last week, and we were actually able to go to California for the weekend. So most of you know my husband is a chiropractor, and we went down to Southern California, Costa Mesa area, which is in Orange County, for a chiropractic seminar down there. My brother lives in Orange County, so we were able to see him for a little bit and enjoy the sunshine. It was like 65 degrees and sunny. I was loving it. And we had kind of a story coming home that night. So we knew that the snow had picked up again. That was a Sunday in California, and we were making all these arrangements to just try and make it home. The problem isn't the fact that the town wasn't plowed and the roads in town. It was getting to our house, which we knew would be the difficult part of the day. We made it into Pasco, Washington. Our flight landed just fine. And like I said, the roads in town were fine. It was lightly snowing, but it hadn't started building up yet. But overnight, the night before, the winds had picked up in our country living, and we were getting texts from both our farmer that owns the wheat field out here, as well as our sort of neighbors, which are, acres away, that our private road and the country road that leads to our property was completely drifted over with, 3-foot high drifts because of the wind. So all the snow had previously fallen, but then it just got windy and it just moved it all around. So even if the farmer could get out and plow with his loader, it would all go back anyway. So he was like, I'm not going to go plow just to have it all drift back over, 10 minutes later starting, and then an hour later, it's all for nothing. Well, I'm going to go into the crazy story of how we got home that night a little bit later, but I wanted to share some of the lessons that I'm now learning from the snow. I've got 5 big life lessons that the snow has taught me this season. And let's just say it has to deal with a snowmobile, getting dressed in a car, tossing luggage around in the snow, and just trying to make the most of it. So let's dive into my 5 big takeaways from the snow. When life gives you snow, make some snow angels. I could sit here and complain and whine and feel sorry for myself, especially when I've had to rearrange so many client sessions. all my clients that have been one-on-one in town, thankfully, have been very understanding and have been willing to either do their sessions that we can do virtually or, make rearrangements to our schedule and just try to make the most of it where we can. And it's gotten me to lesson number 1, which is I'm going to call be a Boy Scout. So always be prepared. I've known since we've lived out in the country now for a few years, it's always good to have some things on hand, but I never really had to dive into some of our reserves until this winter. Actually, in December this year, my husband and I, he's so sweet. He helped me out, even though he didn't, really have to. It was me doing the cooking and stuff, but he helped me can them. We canned a bunch of soups and stews. I made a bunch of pots of chili and canned them. Some of them just ended up being frozen. Like I would put them in mason quart jars, put them in the freezer. Some items I canned, like tomato soup, and just having things on hand in case leads to preparedness. And I even bought snow boots. I'd never had snow boots in my life, but I found a pair of Sorel Joan of Arctic snow boots, which are highly rated and so far amazing. They've kept my feet warm this whole winter now that I've needed them. I bought them over a year ago thinking like, oh, if we happen to get snow, I might need them. I didn't even use them last winter at all. I was like, well, did I waste money on these things? Well, good thing I had them because we ended up needing them this year. So just being prepared as much as you can. We were able to purchase a 4-wheeler this last summer, and it was all kind of in hopes, or not hopes, but in efforts to be prepared. Of course, my side mind is thinking, oh yeah, my husband just wants this fun all-terrain vehicle. But then he went ahead and got a blade attached to the front of it just in case we needed to push around snow and at least try to make an effort to get out of our house. And, if you don't have the need for a 4-wheeler, that's totally fine. That's not my point of this. My point is to say, like, be prepared where you can. Have some extra food storage, even if it's just some canned items that you've maybe frozen or extra protein powder, something that you can have on hand that is shelf stable. So if worst comes to worst, you can survive. There was about 4 days right at the first snow where I physically couldn't get out of my house. My car was stuck in the garage. The farmer couldn't come plow because his equipment broke down yet again. And my husband had finally made it out in his GMC truck. So I was stranded here, but luckily we had enough things, soups and frozen stews and items that I could pull out of the cupboards for us to live on. So always be prepared. Lesson number 2 is, oh, won't you be my neighbor? Obviously, I'm stealing that from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I loved that show as a kid. So give me a little shout out if you loved Lady Elaine and the little trolley. But obviously I'm dating myself right now because I loved that show growing up. And obviously living in the country, my neighbors aren't right next door. It's a little bit of a jaunt if I want to go just, borrow a cup of flour from my neighbors. And although I don't see them that often because we're country neighbors, being there for one another and helping each other out. So at first, when we had our big first snow, my husband's ATV or 4-wheeler, there we go, it was working. He had the blade on the front to push around snow. So he was able to get our driveway kind of cleared out. And then he was starting to work on the other neighbors' driveways that are near us. And one of our neighbors, her husband actually works up in Spokane, which is a 2-hour drive. So he commutes up there usually either Sunday night or Monday morning, and he works there all week and then comes home on the weekends. And that's a long story right there. But anyway, he started plowing them out, and there was basically about an hour of opportunity on a Sunday. There was about an hour of opportunity for him to get on the road so he could actually make it to work before the wind picked up again, because if he wouldn't have got it out that day at that time, he wouldn't have made it to work, and then he would have had to call in again for the next few days, who knows. Plus, it gave his wife the opportunity to make it into town and pick up some groceries. Apparently, they weren't that prepared themselves, and they were pretty much out of food, and they have 3 kids. So my husband was able to get them plowed out and open up that window of opportunity for him to make it to Spokane, as well as the wife to go get some groceries in her vehicle. And she was so thankful. I think not only the fact that she was able to get groceries and provide for their kids, but the fact that she was just able to kind of see civilization, because at this point we'd all been snowed in for about 3 days. I think the cabin fever was definitely setting in. She sent me a text message picture of this little snowman with a bunch of knives stabbed in it, and it said, "Die, winter, die." I was like, that's been the best like meme of all this experience. And she was so thankful. The next morning, she and their daughter came over with some fresh baked cookies for my husband as a big thank you. And I may have sneaked one of them, but anyway, I digress. So just being there for each other as much as possible. And all of this was happening over the Valentine's Day kind of season. And the Saturday night before Valentine's Day was on a Thursday this year. My husband had this awesome date night planned for us. He still hasn't even told me what it was. He was just like, all right, be ready to go by 6 p.m. Like, dress all nice if you want. You can wear your heels and your favorite dress. And we're going to go have this. I don't know what we were going to do. I don't know. But he had all this stuff planned, and he ended up having to cancel everything because we wouldn't have been able to make it into town anyway. And I believe everything pretty much shut down. Like, all the restaurants were pretty much shutting down that night. And anyway, so instead of going out for Valentine's Day, our neighbors, actually a different set, husband and wife, called us up and said, hey, like, we're going to be making a special Valentine's Day meal. I know you and Chris are kind of stuck in home as well. We'd love to have you guys over for dinner and, celebrate kind of Valentine's Day together. And we said, okay. So we went over to our neighbors. We made it over there on the 4-wheeler and had dinner with them. And it was just awesome to get to know our neighbors a little bit better, especially they're kind of close in age to us. They also don't have children, and, just hanging out with people and trusting your neighbors and enjoying the process, even if you are kind of snowed in, or, just going with the flow sometimes. Which leads me to lesson number 3. Acceptance. Like, what are the stages of grief? There's like acceptance or denial, then acceptance. I don't know. Some things are just out of our control, and that's okay. But it's what you choose to do that defines who you are. So how you choose to react defines the person that you're going to become, and ultimately your attitude and your mood around it. Obviously my husband had to cancel our Valentine's plans, but we made different plans instead, and we just went with it. There was a dress that I had that I really wanted to wear on Valentine's Day because it was black and pink and lacy and all the things that I love, but I wasn't going to wear that on the 4-wheeler to go next to our neighbor's house. So I wore a pink sweater instead and jeans and my boots that I could go around in the snow in. But that's okay. You just got to go with the flow, or being able to reschedule most of, if not all of my clients, either virtually or on different dates, just to try and make do. But you know what? It also gave me a chance to rest my body. And this is going off topic here for a moment, but most of you know I've been having some health struggles again as I'm trying to regain some feminine cycles and get my body back on track. And I'm on some different, not only natural protocols, but some medicine as well, some medications, just to try and get my body functioning again. And it's affecting my sleep again. It isn't as bad as it was about 5 years ago when I was only sleeping like 1 to 2 hours a day, but I've been struggling like 1 to maybe 2 nights a week now where I'm not falling asleep till about 5 or 6 a.m. And anyway, having this kind of rest period during all this snow, I think has been super helpful on my body, because then I could sleep in if I needed and let my body just rest and recuperate and do things as much as I can from home in order to survive all the winter. So I encourage you, no matter what you're going through, maybe just if it's out of your control, accept it, decide how you're going to react, and make different plans and arrangements if you need to. Number 4 is all about being a kid sometimes, kind of being spontaneous and embracing the inner youth. So we did a lot of fun things that I hadn't done in a long time, because I've sometimes lost that childhood almost freedom from fear, so to speak. I think back to when I was a kid and I used to sled down crazy hills and do gymnastics and all these insane things with my body, and I didn't have any fear. And now as an adult, I'm like, oh, I don't want to go down the hill on that crazy sled because I might hit my head or I might do this. And sometimes you just got to embrace your inner child and be a little spontaneous. So one of the first days of the snow, we had been snowed in, I think going on like 2 days. It was a weekend, and my husband was like, let's take that old rickety sled. Yeah, the rickety sled that I had as a kid. For some reason we had it, and it was already an antique when I was a kid. I think it was one of those like rail metal sleds. For some reason we had it, and we took it up on the four-wheeler to the top of our private road, and we just started sledding down. It was pretty icy, but it was really fun. So we did that. One night we had a little bit of an adventure. We decided to buy some new sleds because that one got toasted. And we bought some of those like plastic ones that are rated to go super fast from Amazon. He found them online, and 2-day shipping, which the UPS man is not coming to our house. I can't even get my United States Postal Service mail right now because they're not making it up our hill, but I digress. We had them delivered to my mom's address in town, and we picked them up, etc., brought them out here, and we were like, well, we don't know if the snow is going to still be here when we get back from California. Maybe we were setting ourselves up for a self-proclaimed prophecy at that point. I don't know, I forget what it's called, but we were like, oh, it's probably not going to be snowing here when we get back from California. So we decided to go night sledding one night, and my husband comes home from work. I had already had dinner prepped and ready to go. I was already ready in my snow gear. He got dressed really quick. We go out. It's at night, and we start going up a hill in the backcountry, going up over some drifts, and it's at night. Granted, we do have headlights on the four-wheeler, and my husband tried to go over a drift, and it had been blown over. At first, we couldn't really go over it, and then he guns it, and we make it over this little drift. We're like, okay, we're good to go. We're going to get to the top of this hill. We're going to sled down. It's going to be fun. We'll go down a few times each, and we'll head back and have dinner. Well, he gets stuck. The four-wheeler just started digging into this drift, and it probably went down about 3 feet, just the way that the snow had gone, and then the four-wheeler just kept digging in, and it's got the blade attached to the front at this point, so it just keeps pushing more and more snow in the front of the vehicle. Well, I got tired of just standing there waiting because we did have a shovel with us, thankfully, but only one of them, so I was pretty much a sitting duck, and I was really cold. So we have one neighbor that's kind of at the top of the hill, but I've never met this family before. They've only been living in this house for maybe a little over 6 months. And apparently the wife is very shy already. So I was like, well, I'm going to walk to the country farmhouse over here. I don't even know who lives here. I know it's a family, but maybe they can help us, or maybe one of them can give me a ride back to our house. I can pick up the truck and come get you, Chris, and we can leave the four-wheeler out here. Well, poor family. I trek for about 15 minutes to get to this house. I knock on the door. I probably look like a weirdo. It's the middle of the night. I'm all bundled up. I have a ski mask on, all the things. I don't even look like a girl at this point. The poor woman answers the door, and she doesn't even open it. And she's like, hello, who's out there? Obviously I can tell she's freaked out. She's got 3 kids in the house. And I was like, I'm your neighbor down the road, and I'm a girl. I promise. We got stuck in our four-wheeler out here. So she finally figures out kind of who I am, and poor thing, she lets me in. She lets me use her phone because neither one of us brought our phones, and I was able to call our farmer that lives down the road, and he was going to come pick me up so I could go pick up our truck from the house, come back and swing back and get my husband. And long story short, as I'm waiting for the farmer to come pick me up, I hear this vroom vroom, and I see headlights kind of coming out of the hills. Thankfully, my husband had gotten the four-wheeler unstuck from this drift, and he was able to dig it out, but he had to take the front blade off of the vehicle to do it. So he took the snow blade off of the front, left it in the snow, kind of propped it upright vertical so that way he could find it the next day, and came back and picked me up. And then obviously he was a little worried. He's like, wait a minute. She just went to this house. It's the middle of the country. They don't know her. She doesn't know them. But they were super nice. And anyway, we called the farmer. He was able to not come back and get me. And my husband and I made it back home that night. It was just insane. Probably not our best idea, but it made for a fun story, right? So just embrace your inner child. Win it if you can. Not all the time, but there's times to be spontaneous and just be a little kid. That's always one of my favorite things. Even this morning, I was working out in our at-home gym, and one of my favorite songs came on, actually by Icona Pop, and it's called Clap Snap, if you're ever interested. And I just started dancing like a fool. My husband was actually sitting in the sauna getting his sweat on in there, and I just started dancing and like letting my inner weirdo youth come out. So that's me. That's why he married me, y'all. Can't you tell I'm a catch? And as we wrap up here, I've got one more life lesson. So lesson number 5 is believe and trust the people that you've put in your life. And it took me a little while to really understand this one. And I had to trust the person I've chose to put in my life, my one and only, my spouse, my husband, my provider, my, caretaker, my husband, Chris. So back to our story, another story of getting home after being in California. So we wake up in California. It's sunny. It's beautiful. It's Sunday. We know we're trying to travel home that day. And we find out that our county road getting to our home is closed. The city closed it. And then our private road, the 1.5 mile one to make it to our home, is completely drifted over with like 3 to 4 foot drifts because of the wind. And our farmer said, don't try and drive on it. He texted this mass text to all the people that live out here. There's about 5 houses out here on this hill where we're at. And he was like, don't try to go anywhere. It's super windy. Even if I do try to plow it, it's all going to drift back over anyway. He was like, just stay put. It's a Sunday. Just try and hang tight, guys. And so obviously everyone that was at home was texting back in this group chat saying, oh yeah, we're stuck in the house. We can't go anywhere. Even if we do try to shovel our way out, you'd have to shovel for, 2 miles from the point of your driveway entrance to the end of the road. And then you still have a closed country road to drive on after that. So everyone was like, oh yeah, we're just staying put. We're like, great, we're in California. How are we going to get home? So preemptively, my husband was like assuming the worst. He's like, okay, if we can't get to our house, what can we do? Can we stay in town with your mom if we need to? Can we make other arrangements? Which we could have. We could have landed in the airport, gotten my car because my car was parked at the airport, drove to my mom's house, stayed there. But then the next day I would have been stuck there because she would have gone to work. My husband would have gone to his office, and then I would be stuck there with no winter clothes even. I mean, I had some layers because I was traveling and I was smart, but I didn't have a heavy winter coat with me. I had a leather jacket and some scarves, and I think I had maybe some mittens, and then my warmest shoes were my booties that I had traveled in on my feet. So I wasn't prepared. And he was like, okay, I'm going to get us home. He called his dad that morning, and his parents live about an hour away from us in that country farming community that I was talking about. But they have snowmobiles. In fact, we've gone snowmobiling with them. We borrowed some machines from them, and we went up into McCall, Idaho a few years ago. And I'm a tough chick. I go biking on a snowmobile. So if I fall, it's just in a powdery drift. And he's like, okay, I can't get the snowmobile to your house, Chris, but what we can do is we can drop it off somewhere nearby. So I actually have a client that lives over on the next hillside over, and their road getting to their house was not closed by the city. So I contacted her. I'm like, hey, if we have my in-laws drop off a snowmobile in front of your house, can we leave it there? Is that okay? They were like, yeah, sure, of course. We explained what we were going to do, and they were cool with it. So Chris's dad even brought him his snow gear from when he was a high schooler, so he's got like snow pants, a snow jacket, his helmet, gloves, pair of goggles, all the necessary things to snowmobile, brings that up all the way up to Tri-Cities, leaves it at our sort of country neighbor's house over on the next hillside over, which normally to get to that part of like town or to get to that neighborhood, it's like at least a 10-minute drive for me. And they left the snowmobile there. I'm trying to like sum up the story as best I can and explain what really happened. And we land in Pasco. Of course, the roads in town are like fine. It's kind of snowy, but it's a little icy, but the roads are like pretty much clear. You can drive slow and you'll be fine. Everyone's like, oh yeah, you guys are good. It's fine. The roads are fine in town. And we're like, this is not what we're worried about. We're worried about up at our place, what it's going to be like. So we make it up to our neighbor's house. And as soon as we start climbing in elevation to get to their neighborhood, the snow is getting worse and worse on the road. You know, it goes from bare roads to 2 to 3 inches now of snow, plus covered in ice. But we get to the snowmobile parked in front of their home. My husband grabs a duffel bag of clothes that his parents left him, and he gets in the back of my vehicle and just starts putting on his snow gear. He puts on his snow pants, puts on his jacket, all the things. And we get it up and going, and he snowmobiles over to the top of our private road. So we have to go about, I don't know, it took us probably 20 minutes to get there to the top of our road. And we parked my car up at the top where our like mailboxes are and all that. And then he snowmobiled all the way back home, got me snow gear, like my snow pants and whatnot, comes back with a duffel bag, and we load everything up. I get my snow pants on, my gear. We load the duffel bag up with our luggage. So I've got like my purse strapped to my back, and then we had another duffel bag for the suitcases, and we bundle up and we try to make it home, which I was freaking out on the whole ride home from the airport in my rig. I'm like, maybe you should just drop me off at my mom's because I can just be stuck there for like a day or two. It's fine. I'll just stay at her house. She's got a guest room. And my husband was like, no, I think you should come home with me. And I started to kind of freak out, and I didn't realize this until later, but I was showing doubt in him and his ability to caretake for his wife and his partner and fully be there to protect and make sure that I was safe. So let me go back to the story. We go from the top of our hill on a snowmobile for about 1.5 miles to get to our home. We've got all of our luggage with us. One of the duffel bags I'm trying to hang on to behind us on the back of the snowmobile. I'm hanging on to him with one arm because this is just a single person machine. It's not meant for 2 people. And one of the duffel bags just keeps kind of like flying off and it won't stay. So finally my husband like stops the snow machine and dumps it off the side. He's like, I'll come back and get it later. It's fine. He's like, I just want to get you home. So he gets me home. I'm all cold, but we make it. I'm in the garage, and then he turns around, he goes back and gets the piece of luggage that we had to throw out of the machine and brings it home, and we make it into the house. And then long story short, I've been stuck at home ever since because we haven't even been able to get my vehicle back down from the top of the hill because it's been too snowed in. So let me backtrack for a second. As we were coming home from the airport in my car, like I said, he's having this, feeling like I'm not trusting with him. I'm not trusting him. And he was like, well, fine. Like, just go to your mom's. Like, you don't trust me. And I was like, okay, Deidre, shut up. Just go with it. It's going to be okay. You're kind of freaking out right now for no real reason. I mean, at the end of the day, if we could get my car to the top of the hill, we could technically walk home as long as he got my snow gear. And I was just having a little bit of trepidation about this whole way of getting home, but it wasn't speaking love and trust into my husband. My doubts and my fears weren't filling his, conscience as a man. Here he is, he's trying to provide for his wife, trying to be the caretaker for her, and trying to make sure that she's safe and accounted for and at home, comfortable in a warm house. And here I am just doubting him. So that's my biggest lesson from this whole thing is the people that you choose to put in your life, trust them and believe in them. I've chosen this person as my partner, and he's trying to show up for me and trying to provide for me the best that he can and make sure that I'm safe and warm. And here I was doubting him. And that was not speaking into him, not only as a spouse and a husband and a provider, but also as a man. And once I finally realized that, I shut up and let him show me how this was all going to work. And it worked out. We made it home that night. And I am thankful that I went ahead and did it, because if I wouldn't have made it home with him that night on the snow machine, I would have had to do the same exact thing the next day just to get home, because he's been taking the snowmobile up to the top of our hill every day since then just to get into town to go ahead and open our chiropractic clinic. It's a little nuts out here. I feel like I'm living in Antarctica, maybe just Alaska, maybe not Antarctica, but Alaska for sure. And, he just needed to feel like he could provide for me. And I know some of you may or may not be married, or maybe you don't necessarily have a similar situation, but there's people that you put in your life, whether it's a best friend or a spouse or a partner, and you need to, if you're choosing to put that person in your life, choose to fully trust them and believe that they are going to provide for you to the best of their ability. And no matter what, just realize that you're in it together, right? Like, we're in this together. How can we help each other out? And how can we provide for one another the best that we possibly can? So it was a crazy night. We made it home. I've still been snowed in the house for a couple days now, but again, it's kind of just going back to like, okay, just accept it, do what you can, work virtually, record more podcasts, like make more content while you can, and enjoy it while it lasts, because pretty soon it'll be summertime and it'll be over 100 degrees here, and everyone will be complaining that it's too hot, which I guarantee you I'm not one of those people. Even when it's 110 degrees here, I'm like, let's bring it on. I want to feel warm. I want to sit out in the sun. That's my personality. I don't usually complain when it's super hot outside. But anyway, I hope this podcast, I know I kind of told a lot of stories, but I'm a storyteller, and I just hope that it helps you, maybe see things from a new perspective. Maybe if it's not just the snow, but whatever it is, the storm of life that you're going through, how can you choose to, be prepared, trust in your neighbors, accept the things that are happening and accept how you're going to react, channel your inner child, and then believe and trust in the people that you've chosen to put in your life. With that, I hope you go out there and make some snow angels out of all of this snow.
Hey ladies, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. To help empower more women, please be a doll and rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. For show notes and other free resources we mentioned today, go to stylebydeidre.com.